Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam.
Hello friends, this is Professor Neelam Panchal from Gujarat University and I welcome you all in this session on Span of Control Part 2. Friends, let me introduce you to the topic. Span of control is a foundational concept in organizational theory and a management science that refers to the number of direct reports a manager can effectively supervise. It determines how managerial authority and responsibilities are distributed throughout the organization. The concept originates from the classical management theories and remains relevant as organizations seek to balance control, efficiency, agility, and employee empowerment in today's dynamic environments. A well-defined span of control ensures that a manager can maintain effective communication, performance monitoring, and decision-making without becoming overburdened. So, the choice of the span, it directly affects the organization structure, it narrows the spans, lead to tall, hierarchical organizations with multiple management layers, whereas wide spans result in flatter organization with fewer levels and broader supervisor responsibilities. So, in today's globalized and tech-enabled workspaces, this choice of the span has strategic implications for the speed, innovation and leadership styles. Importantly, span of control also impacts employee motivation and behavior. With narrow spans, employees may benefit from personalized attention and mentoring but also experience micromanagement. In contrast, the wide spans grant employees more autonomy, which can enhance the creativity and ownership but may reduce the frequency and the depth of managerial engagement. So, span of control serves not only as a structural design decision but also as a tool to influence organizational culture and employee experience. Let me explain you the objectives of the session. The objectives of the sessions are to make you understand the concept and importance of the span of control in organization management, to distinguish between the narrow and wider spans of control with practical examples, to identify the factors affecting span of control such as team size, complexity and technology, to evaluate the pros and cons of different spans in various organizational settings, and lastly, to explore the modern trends in the span of control including digital tools and the remote supervision. So, let us try to understand everything in detail with the span of control and its types. So, based on the number of the employees a manager supervises, the span of control is broadly classified into two categories. One is narrow span and another is a wide span. And each span has a different characteristics and the implications for the managerial effectiveness, communication flow and employee autonomy. Let us understand first of all narrow span of control. Can you jot down on a piece of paper what can be the narrow span of control? So friends, a narrow span of control occurs when a manager supervises a small group of subordinates, typically fewer than 6. This approach allows for a close supervision, better communication and a more direct feedback. It is highly beneficial in an environment where the tasks are complex, require specialized knowledge, or involve high level of risk, such as in healthcare, research, or aviation. So, managers have more time for coaching and developing individual employees, which can be especially valuable in training intensive or innovation driven roles. However, narrow spans results in a taller organizational structure, meaning more layers of the management are required to oversee the same number of employees. Now, these can lead to slower decision making, reduced organizational agility, and increased administrative cost. Furthermore, excessive supervision, it can reduce the employee autonomy. They feel like they are supervised constantly, which may dampen motivation or innovation if not balanced appropriately. Now, on the other hand, let us try to look into the wider span of control. So, a wide span of control, by contrast, involves a single manager overseeing a large number of employees, sometimes more than 10 or even 20, especially in the tech-enabled or a highly standardized environments. So, this model is very common in flatter organization that promotes the autonomy, efficiency, and a faster communication. With a fewer layers of the management, decisions can be made and implemented more quickly, supporting agile and responsive operations. It also encourages delegation and employee empowerment, essential in the knowledge-based industries or startups. Nevertheless, wide spans can strain a manager's capacity, especially if the team members require frequent guidance. Without proper systems in place, such as digital dashboards, collaborative platforms, or a clear SOPs, the quality of supervision and performance monitoring may decline. Additionally, under the wide spans, personal development and a mentorship that may be limited due to the time constraints. Now, if you look into when to use what, let us understand the hybrid application and a contextual use of the approaches. So, the modern organizations often adopt a hybrid approach, blending both narrow and a wide spans, depending on the departmental needs and the task nature. For example, a customer support team with scripted workflows may function effectively under a wider span, while an R&D unit dealing with the innovative, uncertain, or interdisciplinary projects might benefit more from a narrow span of control. So, the right balance depends on the factors such as workforce capability, use of technology, task complexity, and organizational strategy. Now, let us try to understand what are the factors influencing the span of control. Friends, the effectiveness and appropriateness of a manager's span of control are shaped by several interdependent organizational, behavioral, and technological factors. Now, these variables collectively determine how many subordinates a manager can effectively supervise without compromising quality, coordination, and decision making. So, the span of control affects both the efficiency and employee experience. Understanding the underlying influence is critical for optimal organizational design. So, let us understand all the factors one by one. So, the first is the nature and complexity of the task. Now, the nature of the work being performed is perhaps the most fundamental factor. If the tasks are routine, standardized, and clearly defined, such as in manufacturing or customer service, managers can effectively oversee a large number of subordinates, thereby adopting a wider span of control. Now, these tasks require minimal discretion and a limited intervention from the supervisors. On the other hand, complex, ambiguous, or a knowledge-intensive work such as product development, consulting, or a research, it demands the close coordination, problem solving, and feedback. So, in such context, a narrower span becomes essential to maintain the quality, to provide the guidance and avoid the managerial overload. Now, the second is a managerial capacity and a leadership style. Friends, the skills, experience and a leadership style of the manager are very crucial determinant of their capacity to supervise the subordinates. Highly competent managers who possess the strong time management, delegation and decision making skills are better equipped to handle with a wider spans. They can empower the teams, delegate the effectively and use the performance metrics to monitor the progress. Conversely, the less experienced or overwhelmed managers may struggle with supervising even a small team, especially when the work demands direct involvement or constant feedback. Leadership style also matters. A participative leader may thrive with a wider span in an empowered team environment, whereas an autocratic manager may prefer a smaller, more tightly controlled team. Now, the third point is subordinates' competence and autonomy. So, the capability, training level and independence of the team members also heavily influence the span decisions. Skilled and self-directed employees who understand their roles and who are comfortable with the decision making typically really require minimum supervision. So, these facilitates a wider span of control. For example, if a team of senior analysts or consultants, the manager can act more as a facilitator than a supervisor. In contrast, new hires, interns or inexperienced staff need closer guidance, mentoring and the performance monitoring. In such cases, a narrower span helps ensure proper onboarding and a quality control. Next point is a technological support and a communication system. So, advancement in the communication and the management technologies have significantly expanded the possibility of managing larger teams. Tools such as project management platforms, performance dashboards, CRM systems and real-time communication apps like Slack, Microsoft Teams. Now, these enables managers to track the progress, set the goals and address the issues even across dispersed teams. Now, this reduces the need for the physical supervision and supports a wider span of control, especially in a hybrid and a remote work environment. Conversely, in tech deficient or a manual workplaces, tighter spans may be necessary for oversight and coordination. Next factor is organizational structure, culture and geography. Friends, organizational design and a culture also shape span of control. Flat organizations that encourage decentralized decision making and team autonomy, it often functions well with the wider spans. And such organizations value the empowerment and the trust, allowing managers to supervise more employees with the fewer hierarchical levels. In the contrast, if you look into the traditional or bureaucratic organizations, they often found in the government or a large public sector enterprises maintain the narrower spans due to the formal chain of command and a preference for the detailed supervision. Moreover, geographical dispersion impacts the managerial effectiveness. Supervising a team located in different time zones or countries, it demands more effort in coordination and communication and often leads to reduced span. Similarly, in global or virtual teams, differences in the language, culture and legal frameworks may necessitate greater managerial involvement. After understanding all these factors which influences the span of control, let us try to understand the advantages of a narrow span of control. Now, a narrow span of control as referred to an organization structure in which a manager supervises a relatively smaller number of subordinates. Now, this setup, it enhances the managerial ability to provide the direct supervision, closer guidance and frequent interaction with each team member. So, one of the foremost advantage of this approach is the quality of managerial oversight. Managers are better positioned to identify individual strengths and weaknesses. They offer the personalized feedback and a one-to-one direction and address the performance issues promptly. In the knowledge intensive or high stakes environments such as healthcare, legal services or aerospace engineering, these level of control ensures rigor, accuracy and a compliance, minimizing the risk of the costly mistakes. Additionally, a narrow span fosters strong mentoring and a leadership involvement because there is a direct involvement of the leader, and the managers can spend more time on coaching and a professional growth activities, nurturing future leaders from within the team. Now, this is particularly advantageous for the organizations that prioritize the talent development and succession planning. The direct and continuous interaction between the managers and employees, it helps to identify the leadership potential early and ensures that the employees receive the support that they need to grow into more senior roles. Moreover, such environments often promote employee engagement as subordinates feel seen, heard and supported. From the structural perspective, a narrow span of control allows for the greater specialization and a task clarity. Since the managers are responsible for fewer people, they can delve more deeply into technical or functional issues, developing subject matter expertise. Now, these often leads to the higher quality decision making and a more innovative problem solving within the functional silos. Furthermore, with a fewer team members to manage, each employee is more likely to operate within a clearly defined roles and expectations, which reduces the ambiguity and enhances the operational discipline. Lastly, the narrow span contributes to a culture of the accountability and precision. With the more frequent manager and employee interactions, there is a continuous monitoring of the progress and also the behavior, which tends to improve the compliance with the organizational norms and standards. In the hierarchical organizations such as the government institutions or the large financial firms or the military settings, these ensures strict adherence to the procedures and fosters a disciplined execution of the strategies. Now, this level of control is ideal in the situations where the errors can lead to reputational, financial or legal consequences. However, it is important to acknowledge the cost implications and potential bureaucratic drawbacks. More the management layers increase the overhead and can slow down the communication and the decision making. Despite this, for environments where the customization, quality and control are paramount, a narrow span of control, it is always remaining a highly effective organizational design choice. Let us look into the disadvantages of a narrow span of control. So, a narrow span of control, while beneficial in certain structured environment, it poses a significant financial, operation and a cultural challenges when applied without strategic alignment. So, one of the prominent disadvantage is the increase in the organizational overhead costs. So, the narrow spans require a greater number of managers to supervise a relatively small number of employees, and these leads to creation of the multiple layers, thereby inflating salary expenditures, administrative support costs and the infrastructural needs such as office space and coordination mechanisms. For institutions operating under the budget constraints such as startup or public sector organizations, these structural arrangements can become economically unsustainable. Beyond financial concerns, narrow spans of control can unintentionally encourage the micromanagement. With the fewer subordinates to oversee, managers may feel compelled to become excessively involved in the routine tasks and the day-to-day decision making. And this behavior restricts employees' autonomy and reduces the scope for innovation and independent thinking. Over time, it can foster a culture of the dependency where team members rely heavily on the managerial approach, thereby hampering the initiative, motivation, and creative problem solving. Friends, employees may begin to perceive the work environment as controlling or many times distrustful, resulting in a low morale, reduce the job satisfaction, and higher turnover rates. Another critical disadvantage lies in the communication and the decision making influences inherent in the highly vertical structures. So, with a more layer of management, information must pass through multiple channels before reaching to the top or bottom of the hierarchy. So, this not only delays the responses but also increases the risk of distortion, misinterpretation, and selective filtering of the information. So, the vertical silo effect can dilute accountability as it becomes harder to trace the origin of the decisions or to hold the individuals responsible for the outcomes. Furthermore, interdepartmental collaboration it may suffer, limiting the organizational agility and responsiveness to the external changes is also very important. And in today's fast-paced, technology-driven and a globalized business environment, such rigid hierarchies can become a strategic liability. So friends, organizations that operate in sectors requiring rapid innovation, customer responsiveness, or a cross-functional collaboration that may find that narrow spans of control impede their ability to compete. Digital businesses, agile startups, and decentralized multinational firms often prefer flatter structures to encourage the speed, to encourage the environment, and to have adaptive decision making. So, the narrow spans can be effective in regulatory heavy or high risk sectors. There must be strategically justified, keeping in view the broader goals, culture, and the dynamic needs of the organization. Now, let us look into what are the advantages of the wider span of control. So, a wide span of control enables the organization to adopt a flatter hierarchical structure, leading to the greater operational efficiency, faster decision making, and a cost savings. So, with the fewer levels of the management, communication flows more directly between the executives and a frontline employees, reducing the delays caused by the managerial bottlenecks. This streamlining of the communication fosters the transparency and responsiveness, critical attributes in a fast-paced, competitive industries such as technology, e-commerce, and consulting. Moreover, it supports agile practices with emphasize speed, iterative processes, and cross-functional collaboration. Friends, one of the most celebrated benefit of the wide span is its ability to empower the employees and nurture accountability. Since the managers cannot micromanage every task due to the sheer size of their teams, employees are entrusted with a more decision-making autonomy and a problem-solving responsibility. And this trust cultivates a sense of ownership, leading to the higher job satisfaction, motivation, and a creativity. Now, when the individuals are encouraged to take the initiative and think independently, the organization reap the benefits of the enhanced innovation and a stronger performance across the functions. And in the environment where the knowledge workers operate, such as design, digital marketing, and a software development, these autonomy is both expected and rewarded. So, another advantage is a cost effectiveness. A wide span of control reduces the need for the multiple layers of the supervisory roles, and it's significantly lowering the salary and administrative expenses. Fewer managers mean fewer super staff, and smaller physical infrastructure and a learner coordination processes, and this is particularly valuable for the startup and small to medium enterprises where resources are limited and agility is essential. So, even in the large corporation, this structure supports strategic scaling by allowing organizations to expand without proportionately increasing the management headcount. Furthermore, the adoption of the digital technologies has amplified the practicality of the wider spans. Friends, tools such as cloud-based project management platforms, communication channels and data dashboards allow managers to oversee multiple team managers and track the performance and also maintain the engagement even in the geographically dispersed or the remote work environment. Now, these technologies reduce the traditional challenges associated with the supervising large teams, enabling effective leadership without constant physical presence. As a result, many modern organizations are increasingly leaning towards the wide span of control as a strategy to support the flexibility, inclusiveness, and high impact work cultures. Let us look into what are the disadvantages of the wide span of control. So, while a wide span of control promotes the agility and cost efficiency, it often presents a significant managerial challenges and risk associated with reduced supervisory capacity. So, as a manager's number of direct reports expands, it becomes increasingly difficult to provide consistent, personalized attention, timely feedback and adequate support to each member. These can result in the gaps in the communication and oversight, where some employees may feel neglected or unclear about their roles and responsibilities, and the reduced manager to employee interaction, it often leads to inconsistent performance standards which can negatively impact the overall team effectiveness and the output quality. Also, one of the critical drawback of the wide span is that their adverse effect on the employee development and the engagement. Managers overloaded with the many subordinates, it may lack the bandwidth to engage in effective coaching, mentoring or the skill development activities. Now, these deficit is especially pronounced for new hires or less experienced employees who typically require close guidance to build the competencies and understand the organizational expectations. So, in the environment where the learning through observation and a direct supervision is a crucial, such as healthcare, manufacturing or a safety sensitive sectors. So, these limitations it can hinder the employee growth and compromise operational safety and compliance. Furthermore, a wider span of control complicates the risk management and quality assurance within the team. So, the potential issues or a deviation from the standards, it may go unnoticed due to the limited managerial attention, increasing the likelihood of errors, conflicts or regulatory breaches. The decentralization of the decision making, while empowering in some respects, it can also lead to fragmented interpretation of the policies and inconsistent application of the organizational goals. So, without strong systems and standardized procedures, these diffusion of control, it may weaken the organizational overall coherence, governance and strategic alignment. And lastly, wide spans can impose significant cognitive and administrative burdens on the managers, and the challenge of coordinating the diverse activities, resolving the conflict and maintaining the team motivation across the large number of direct reports, it may lead to managerial burnout and turnover. Consequently, the organization must balance the benefit of the wider spans with the investment in the technology, training and support the structure to mitigate these risks and maintain the effective leadership. Now, let us try to look into what are the contemporary trends and the future of the span of control. So, in today's fast evolving digital landscape and the traditional concept of the span of the control is undergoing significant transformation. Organizations are increasingly moving away from rigid hierarchical structure to the more fluid project-based and team-centric models. And these contemporary designs prioritize agility, flexibility and cross-functional collaborations over the strict supervisory ratio. And in this context, we can say that the managers are evolving from authoritative controllers to the facilitators and enablers, focusing on empowering teams, fostering autonomy and nurturing innovation rather than micromanaging day-to-day activities. Technological advancements are very crucial, friends, and they are the crucial driver behind this evolution. The proliferation of the digital collaboration tools, AI-driven analytics and the remote working platforms is expanding managers' capacity to oversee larger teams without compromising the oversight or engagement. Tools such as Trello, Asana, Zoom, Microsoft Teams and Notion enable asynchronous communications, task tracking and a real-time performance monitoring allows the managers to maintain the visibility across the distributed or self-managed teams. This enables a broader span of control that is both effective and sustainable, and even when the direct personal interaction is limited by geography or time zones. And the rise of the self-managed and agile teams further challenges the traditional span norms. And these teams are designed to operate with a high degree of autonomy, relying on the collective accountability and peer governance to deliver the results. Managers in such settings act as a coaches and the strategic guides, stepping in to remove obstacles and align efforts with the broader organizational goals. And this shift implies that the span of control is less about simply counting direct reports and more about designing the system and processes that promote the independence, continuous learning and a shared responsibility. Looking forward, the future of the span of control is characterized by customization, adaptability and integration. Rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, successful organizations and successful managers, they dynamically adjust the spans based upon the factors like task complexity, employee skill levels, technology maturity and strategic imperatives. For example, innovative driven departments, it may require a narrow spans to nurture the creativity and experimentation, while the routine operational units might operate effectively under the wider spans supported by the automation. By harnessing both the human capabilities and the technological enablers, organization can achieve an optimal balance, ensuring managerial efficiency, responsiveness and resilience in increasingly complex and a fast-paced environment. Span of control remains a foundational concept in the organizational design, critically influencing the managerial effectiveness, communication flow and operational efficiency. Now, after this, let me conclude the session. So friends, whether it is narrow or wide, the span chosen impacts the hierarchical complexity, employee supervision and decision-making speed within an organization. We have seen that narrow spans afford closer oversight, higher accountability and tailored employee development, but come at the cost of increased managerial layers and potential bureaucracy. Conversely, we have seen that wide span promotes the flatter structures, agility and employee empowerment, but may risk managerial overload and inconsistent supervision. The optimal span of control is not static or universal. Rather, it is contingent upon multiple interrelated factors, including task complexity, managerial skills, employee competence, technological infrastructure, and organizational culture. So, If you are a manager, modern organizations must therefore approach the spend design as a dynamic and a context sensitive challenge, balancing control with the flexibility to suit the diverse functional needs. And in the contemporary digital era, we have seen that the technological advancement and evolving work models are reshaping the span of control paradigms, and the digital tools, AI analytics, remote collaboration, and a self-managed teams enable managers to effectively oversee broad teams while maintaining the performance standard and the engagement. So, the future of span of control lies in adaptive customized approach that integrate the human and the technological resources to enhance the managerial capacity, promote the autonomy, and align with the strategic goals. I hope you will be the successful manager, and the successful management of the span of the control fosters in the organizational resilience, innovation, and a sustained competitive advantage, ensuring that both the managers and employees thrive in the increasingly complex and the fast-paced environment. I hope you are clear with all the fundamentals of the span of control, and I hope you like the session. Thank you.